Hello and welcome to a special edition of Your Business, Your Wealth, where we are going to talk about how the media is spreading a virus. But in this case, the virus is not the coronavirus. It's the damage done by the coronavirus because of what it's doing to your portfolio. Right. Cory?
Ironically, they might be making the damage done from the coronavirus less while they're making other damage much worse. But we'll take a look at that. So here's I did a rant to my wife this week as I was reading the New York Times. I'm going to share the article right here because here's the headline that I read. Spiraling virus fears are causing financial carnage.
Carnage. So I want everybody to remember that. Carnage. And in a minute, you're going to see why the nicest man in the world you may have ever met named Cory Shepard nearly made this an explicit episode in our work ahead of time.
I never would have thought it would be me that turned us, into our first explicit episode.
I know, me either.
So carnage, carnage is no middle of the road, no lukewarm kind of word.
No, it'd be like people are damaged. They're, losing their jobs.
Apart, blood and guts, like utter destruction.
Yeah. Like a tornado is carnage. People torn limb from limb, buildings knocked down. Hurricane Katrina, like those are all appropriate ways to describe with carnage.
But here's what I read. I mean, interpretation can be interpretation, and something might have happened that they might define as carnage. So I went into the article to see what they said. Well, here's what I want to pull out for y'all. This sentence at the end of the third paragraph in, for all the heartburn-inducing turmoil, the S&P ended this week essentially flat.
So this was the end of the first week of the impact of coronavirus,
this is
right?
4 days ago, 4 days from when we're recording this, probably a week out from when you're seeing this, if you're seeing it right after we post it, something like that. So some other things have happened since then, but goodness gracious.
Can you repeat that sentence one more time, though? I want to make sure everybody caught that.
So headline says carnage. Middle of the article says, for all the heartburn-inducing turmoil, which is different than carnage right there.
It's like they're starting to step it down. Like maybe we overdid it in the headline.
The S&P ended this week essentially flat. So we're not flat over the week right this second when we're watching it. But when we read this article, they chose the word carnage. And then in the middle of the article said, the S&P is about same place where it started the week. Oh my gosh. If this is not a form of media falsehood, I don't know what is. This is clickbait. This is trying to get emotions going. And this article may be a big part of why the market continued to go down for a little bit after that, creating emotional turmoil in investors.
Well, and now think about this. People didn't read it until the weekend, right? And all the articles like this one. It's not just this one. And the idea being is, do you think people, after the emotional state, we've talked about this before, the Gelman amnesia effect, where when you read an article, if it's something that you know about, you're like, wow, these reporters are idiots and don't know what they're talking about. And then you turn the page to a subject you don't know anything about, and we think suddenly, like 10 seconds later, that the reporter knows what they're talking about on the subject and greet it with no critical mind. Jordan, our video engineer, didn't you just write a paper on this, like something about the media?
Media bias?
Yeah, I just wrote as a part of my bachelor's, 8-page criticism paper on the effects of fake news.
Well, here, get on this.
Yeah, get that video on there. We're going to talk about this.
So, Jordan, you said something about what the news cycle is and what these type of clickbaity titles do to like the honest brokers of information.
Yeah, so what's actually crazy is ever since the printing press, and even before then, the town crier, the news is where people went to get what's going on, the information, the facts. Mm-hmm. But what's crazy is now that we have all these allegations of fake news and proof of bias, the little guys, you can just dismiss them now. Like, people have taken upon themselves to now, there's so much fake news out there, there's so much bias out there, and there's so many stakeholders that are driving what the news says, that you yourself can't even trust your local newspaper because you're just not sure. You're just lied to so often. So it's just crazy. And what's even crazier than that is there's a study that the average big story news cycle in 2018 was 7 days. That's it.
Big stories.
Big stories. These are like the biggest stories. The medium cycle for those stories was just 7 days.
So, like, what about that? Like, nobody talks about it anymore. Like when Hawaii was going to get hit with nukes. Like, do you guys even remember that in our audience? Like that Hawaii was
not
like...
until you said it. Not until you said it, of course. Like, I even went to Hawaii 6 weeks ago, and I didn't think about that once the whole time I was there.
So, like, like how fast was the cycle on that one? Did that come up in your paper?
No, it talked about how, we're talking about this now, but we don't even remember that because there's so many news stories that hit us so often, and we get hit by these shock stories. Like, even for instance, like this virus going around. It just, we hear it. Once it's gone, we're not going to talk about it because it's on to the next story, because that's how the news cycle drives.
Well, we're going to do another little one of these minisodes specifically on the coronavirus, its impact, and looking at it. But this was just for us to be able to express to all of you the problem that you see and we see when you go out there and you're trying to get decent information and you read an article that tries to jack you up and says carnage in the headline, which for all we know in these newspapers was written by the marketing department, wasn't even written by the journalist. I don't think so. I think these journalists are dishonest brokers. This journalist put his name at the bottom of that article, and everything in his writing was like, it started as carnage, worked its way down to heartburn and turmoil, and then at the end, finished actually flat for the week.
3 different journalists. There's 3 names in the credit byline. So
and it wasn't that long of an article. That thing was like less than 3 paragraphs. It took 3 of them to do it.
No, it's a little longer. It's a little longer than that, but still, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. For all of you in the audience, when Cory brought this up, we thought we need to bring this to you because it's so easy for us to read these articles, to not greet it with the appropriate amount of skepticism. We get affected by the Gell-Mann amnesia. You may be an expert in online marketing. You may be an expert business owner in the technical space in your specific industry. And yet you can read an article like this and suddenly the amnesia you had from the industry specific article you just read that was just utterly and completely full of crap. And then you turn the page, you read an article like this, and suddenly it's like, oh man, these guys are probably honest brokers and really know what they're doing. No. They need traffic. They have a deep and abiding vested interest in what you doing is freak the hell out when you see the headline, so that you will click, so that you will follow, so that you will share, so that you will take action. Because then when you take action, you trigger something called commitment and consistency. And when you commitment and consistency and you take this action and this action, then you start following it down a path and you become more committed to the garbage articles like this that trick you into clicking so that you click on the next one. So with that, we hope that this has cared for all of you. We're not going to do our usual sign off because it's just a short little bite of this today. We're going to work to release it midweek to you. And do not hesitate to reach out to us. Follow us. I'm Ask Wealth Podcast on like Instagram and Twitter. Ask Paul Adams on Instagram, Twitter, and find us on LinkedIn. But shoot us notes if you guys have questions, concerns. You've got a portfolio that you don't know what to do with. Reach out to us. We're happy to help. We just don't want investors getting destroyed by this garbage coming out of the media. Hey guys, so glad you could tune in and watch that video. I want to remind you to subscribe. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you can get the latest piece of financial knowledge that we release. And don't forget, go to Amazon, get a copy of Sound Financial Advice. Why? Because it'll make you better looking and smarter.